I know you have a lot of clients that are also ethically non-monogamous.
Yeah.
That I would assume the kind of the hurdle of having kids and being in open relationships of some kind is, I guess, the biggest obstacle or challenge, or maybe like, I almost want to say least accepting part of the scenario. Like, I feel like most people look at polyamorous couples and go, yeah, do whatever you want. I don't care. But then suddenly when kids come into the discussion, that's when people suddenly go, that's not right.
Yep. And it's exactly the conversation around being gay, right? Like 50 years ago, what you just said was exactly the conversation around not being heterosexual. Is like, yeah, do what you want. But then like, if you want to have kids, like, what are you going to tell them? That you like the same gender?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, forget 50 years ago, still today. It's still harder to adopt. It's still, it's like, it's still an uphill battle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the idea is you're, quote, going to raise your kid gay.
Right.
So they would say, are you going to, quote, raise your kid polyamorous?
Right. And it's like, no, we'll raise our kid to be who they are. And if that means that they're monogamous, great. If that means that they're asexual, great. If that means that they're polyamorous and want to be a big slut and be safe about it, great. Like, go be you in the world. And I think that that's what we can all do as people who are child rearing, is just, you know, encourage them to be themselves, not put our own shit onto them of like, well, this worked for me, so it better work for you.
Yeah. Which, by the way, you can be monogamous and slutty. I would just like everyone to know that.
Also that.
You can just be a huge slut and be monogamous if you want.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
It's how you define the word slut. That's all I'm going to say.
Exactly. Exactly.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Shooters Gotta Shoot. I am your host, Erica Spira, and we have a repeat guest this week for you guys. But before we get started, real quick, what you can do to help us out is you can subscribe to our YouTube page. You're already here. You're watching the show. Just hit the little button. It's free. And also you can join our Patreon, which supports our show, doing this studio, all that stuff, which is patreon.com/shootersgottashoot. For just $5 a month, you really help us out, help the production of the show. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest. She recently has launched her own podcast called The Wright Conversations. You might remember her from a past episode of our podcast before. She's a licensed relationship and sex therapist. Everybody, please welcome the great Rachel Wright.
Hey, thanks. I'm so excited to be back.
Oh, thank you. And we have an extra surprise.
We do.
Somewhat unplanned, but I'm very excited. We have one of your partners here. We have Yair Lechner, who is a private chef.
I am. Hi.
Hello. Welcome to the show.
Surprise, you're on a podcast.
Oh my God.
Well, he was going to be here listening, and then it kind of feels weird to be talking about someone
when they're sitting watching.
Yeah, and they don't have a little bit of stake to just chime in.
Yeah. Now you can, hold me accountable, keep me honest.
I was thinking more defend myself, but yeah.
I think also. So guys, if you haven't listened to our first episode, Rachel, it's number 89. It's called Polyamory 101. She was one of our guests we had on that talked about being ethically non-monogamous and polyamorous. And so we have some updates.
We do.
For the fans. But do we need to give a quick background?
Sure.
So last time you were on, you were married to your partner, and then during the pandemic, opened your relationship.
So we opened our relationship pre-pandemic, but we met these guys who... I'll get to that. We opened our relationship in 2019.
Right.
And then March of 2020 met Yair and his then wife, Ashley. And we dated without touching. Like fully date, like Orthodox Jewish style.
Like in person at all?
Yeah. We did 2 Zoom dates. Two Zoom dates before we met in person?
Something like that. Maybe, something like that.
And then we met and sat 6 feet apart. Like brought our own wine so we didn't have to like share shit. It was... fully COVID friendly, like touched toes from like 6 feet. It was wild.
So the first dates were foursome dates.
Yes.
So not even one-on-one.
No, we would like branch off like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. And one other person would be like, oh, I do too. And like we'd like take a long walk around Domino Park to the bathroom. So like we had little branch off dates.
Right.
And then we wanted to touch each other. So we got an Airbnb and touched each other for a few days and then quarantined for 14 days so that we could go back home.
I mean, I'm on for it.
And now we are getting divorced in a positive way. from our original, our original spouses. And the 4 of us are doing life together, and we live in a house together, and we're all really happy, and it's wonderful.
Okay, so it's like just a legal splitting.
Oh yeah.
Okay, it's an amicable divorce.
Yeah,
the idea being that at some point we can have domestic partnerships that involve more than just the 2 of us. We're like working with a lawyer to try and figure out how to do that legally.
Interesting.
But step 1 is divorces and a divorce party and all that kind of thing.
Divorce party.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Yeah, throw another one in the mix.
Exactly.
You never know who you meet.
Well, and Ashley and Yair didn't get to have their wedding was supposed to be during COVID. And so
oh wow, so you never did.
They're legally married, but they didn't get the reception and the hoo-ha, the hoopla, and the, you know, she didn't even get to wear her wedding dress. So we're going to have like a divorce party that is / a wedding.
Yeah, it was actually pretty anticlimactic. We went to City Hall and sort of kept it a secret and just did it our thing. And then the wedding got postponed. And all of a sudden we had to tell people, like, actually, we're married. I know you didn't show up to it, but and like we had to like come clean. It was like 3 months earlier, so it was kind of a. But anyway, we never got to celebrate. So instead, we'll have a divorce party.
Okay, so a quick breakdown of the ties of the relationship that were from the past episode. You explained it to me like it was a Z.
Yes.
And so essentially, we have you and your husband Kyle.
Yep.
And then we have you, Yair, and your wife Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Rachel, you date both your husband, Yair, and the female, Ashley.
Yes.
And then Ashley, same thing, both men and you.
Yep.
But then the 2 men just don't date.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's the Z with the dotted line.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I remember. I got it. I figured it out.
Yep.
I love it.
I might be monogamous, but I can learn things.
You can keep up. Yeah.
I can learn stuff.
It's so interesting, too, because like the first question, Yair and Kyle call each other partners because the reality is like we all share bank accounts. We all share a home, we share a dog. Like the only thing that they're not doing is romancing each other and having sex. So like they're still partners, but yet the first question that I get asked from people is, do Yair and Kyle have sex?
Funny that it's like, what did they care?
Always the first question.
Always the first question.
Yeah.
Like one of these times I'm just going to say yes and see what happens. Cause like I'm constantly like, no, they're not. No, they're not. And I just want to see like what one person responds. Like if I say, yes, they do. Oh my God. Like, I don't know what's going to, you know?
Right. Okay. So also since our last episode.
Yeah.
At that time, you and your husband moved to be closer location-wise to Yair and Ashley.
Yes.
And then now you all live together in the same house.
We do.
And before that, literally, I think right after our episode came out, I suddenly saw on Instagram that you proposed to Ashley.
I did.
And I remember being like, oh, what's the process of this? Of both of you guys are married, and then now a proposal has happened. And then, like, did anyone else get proposed to? What?
So it's an interesting question. I think that, you know, out of all of the different dyads, the like one-on-one relationships, mine and Ashley gets forgotten the most because we're so heteronormative in our culture. People automatically are like, oh, wife swap or this, you know, like they just kind of interchange us. And so it's forgotten that she and I are also in love and have sex. And, you know, if I could make a baby with Ashley, I would make a baby with Ashley. Mm-hmm. Science doesn't support me in doing that yet, but, you know, so it was really important to me that I got ahead of that and really validated our commitment to each other. So I talked to Yair and got his blessing, you know, as the...
Make it sound so old school and Southern or something.
Well, you know, as the legal...
Yeah, I was like, whose blessing do you get? Do you get her dad's and Yair's?
Right, yeah, basically everybody. I told her mom, Kyle knew. And yeah, I got down on one knee. Never thought in my life I would do that. It was so fun.
Yeah.
It was really cool. I had a whole elaborate thing planned, and then the boys came up and surprised her, and we had dinner together. It was wonderful.
Now, when you refer to, I guess, your group, do you just say a family?
Yeah,
I would assume?
Our family.
Okay. I just want to make sure before I'm like, so you're a family. And you're like, it's not a family. It's technically a commune. Then I'd be like, I don't know. I'm trying, you know.
No, family's great.
I thought that wouldn't be offensive.
Yeah.
I thought that was the right thing to say. Okay. So a question I had for all you guys is, 1, do you want kids? And then 2, how do you navigate? Or is it almost by chance of like, look, we're both getting with both people? Whatever happens, happens.
You want to take this one?
I'll get started.
Okay. So first question, do you guys want kids?
Yes.
So all 4 people want kids?
We want kids.
Okay.
We are sort of mid-conversation about how exactly that's going to happen. We are not super tied to who is whose parent and who is, whose blood is and whose, whose sperm made the actual babies and this and that. We do know that the two moms each want to have one kid. We know that they want to do that together, like at the same time, go through that together.
Ideally.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And ideally, right. Assuming everyone's healthy and assuming everyone can do that. That's obviously not a given, but like, assuming that can happen. And beyond that, we're sort of in the middle of figuring out the rest. I think that there's a lot that's very appealing about just sort of, like you said, let it pull the goalie and, see where the pucks go. And,
you guys seem to be having sex enough.
We'll figure it out.
Exactly.
We'll figure it out.
People. That's something, someone will strike gold.
Exactly. At some point.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. And the idea is that no matter what, all four of us want to be parents to these two kids, and all four of us want to raise these kids, and all four of us want to be equally involved in these kids' lives.
Yeah.
And that's actually part of the reason why we decided to do these amicable divorces, is so that we could all set up a legal structure to where we can be parents and guardians of the kids together.
Right. So like even just the simple shit of like picking them up from school.
Exactly.
It's like I don't have to always notify the school that this person's picking them up. It's like they have on a list that it's legal guardians.
Bingo.
I mean, there's so many little things. Insurance. It's like you can't imagine like how far reaching our society only has it set up for married couples and their biological kids. You have to jump through hoops to like do
it's
anything
wild.
Outside of that. So that's putting a lot of work into that part.
Which is so crazy. Like for parents taking care of a kid. Like, have you ever heard a kid be like, what was hard about my childhood? I had too many people doting on me. Like I had too many people that wanted to play games with me. I was just too loved. It was awful. Like it's going to be wonderful.
Yeah. So how are you deciding last names for children?
That we have not figured out.
Okay.
In fact, my mom asked that question just recently and all of us went, oh shit!
Because between the four of you, there is only 2 last names, correct?
3.
Oh, there is 3.
Yeah,
so Yair and his wife didn't.
Yeah, we have Lenchner, Giddens, and Wright.
Okay.
And I don't personally have I don't care.
Maybe we should make up a new one.
Yeah.
Just like pick a cool one or something.
New one.
Yeah, I don't know what qualifies as a cool last name. Maybe that's the move. Yeah.
Kind of, a lot of the ways that we make decisions between the 4 of us is like, who cares the most, right? Because like there are some topics that. For example, this one, like, I really don't care. I feel very indifferent about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to be like, I have this opinion when, like, I actually don't give a shit. And so I would probably remove myself and ask, like, who actually cares about this? And then let those 2 or 3 people discuss, and then we can come to an agreement.
Yeah, I mean, also now it's so common that women don't change their name. So already there's a lot of kids with their mother technically has a different last name, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
One of my best friends took his wife's name because she was going to be the only. She was in a family where the sons were unable to have kids and the name was going to die.
Right.
And he was not. He also was not particularly tied to it, and so he took her name. This was like we were all supportive and all of that. So
of course.
It happens all the time now.
I can't imagine like a group of polyamorous people being like, "That's so
That's
fucked
terrible."
up." God, they're just abandoning tradition.
Yeah.
How dare they?
Yeah, how dare.
Okay. Well, I was curious because I know you have a lot of clients that are also ethically non-monogamous.
Yeah.
That I would assume the kind of the hurdle of having kids and being in open relationships of some kind is, I guess, the biggest obstacle or challenge, or maybe like, I almost want to say least accepting part of the scenario. Like, I feel like most people look at polyamorous couples and go, yeah, do whatever you want. I don't care. But then suddenly when kids come into the discussion, that's when people suddenly go, that's not right.
Yep. And it's exactly the conversation around being gay, right? Like 50 years ago, what you just said was exactly the conversation around not being heterosexual. Is like, yeah, do what you want. But then like, if you want to have kids, like, what are you going to tell them? That you like the same gender?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, forget 50 years ago, still today. It's still harder to adopt. It's still an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Or the idea is you're, quote, going to raise your kid gay.
Right.
So they would say, are you going to, quote, raise your kid polyamorous?
Right. And it's like, no, we'll raise our kid to be who they are. And if that means that they're monogamous, great. If that means that they're asexual, great. If that means that they're polyamorous and want to be a big slut and be safe about it, great. Like, go be you in the world. And I think that that's what we can all do as people who are child rearing, is just, encourage them to be themselves, not put our own shit onto them of like, well, this worked for me, so it better work for you.
Yeah. Which, by the way, you can be monogamous and slutty. I would just like everyone to know that.
Also that.
You can just be a huge slut and be monogamous if you want.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
It's how you define the word slut. That's all I'm going to say.
Exactly. Exactly.
So also with this whole process of all you guys moving in and stuff, I saw you went and met like the families.
Yeah.
We've done like, I guess, the 4-way kind of family meet and swap.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did you approach that with like first telling your parents that you now are in an open thing? Because I would assume a lot of people want to do this, but want to like keep that private from their family.
So it's really interesting. I think that some parents hear this and they have this reaction of, I don't need to know about your sex life.
Yeah.
Because there's an assumption that the open piece is just about sex. And for some people, that's the case, right? Like they're basically romantically monogamous and then they go out and like have sex with random people and don't talk to them again. And that's totally cool. For me, that wasn't my particular brand of non-monogamy.
Yeah.
There's some of that, but there's the and of, you know, now I have 2 more life partners than I did before. So for my parents specifically, and then I'll toss it over to you for your experience. My parents, when I told them that I identified as polyamorous, like as an orientation, they were like, oh yeah, no, that tracks. Like that makes sense. And because what they saw me do was either cheat on someone or be a serial monogamist. Like I would be with someone until I found someone else and then like leap to that person. And really what I didn't understand was like, why can't I have both?
Right.
Like I truly didn't understand what was so wrong with that. And so they were like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's cool. And my mom asked, you know, what does that mean for you and Kyle? And I'm like, at the time, nothing is going to change. Like we're still going to be living together. We're still going to be doing this. And that's still true. Yeah. So my parents were great. And they recently got to meet my dad and he welcomed them into the family, which was super sweet. And, you know, we're all in a group text together and my brother's great. And yeah, my family was just kind of like, well, Rachel, like that. By this point, they're like, that's cool. Yeah. That's lovely.
Yeah. Or suddenly your parents might be like, oh, double the chance at grandkids.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And more the merrier, you know?
How did your family take it?
Very accepting. I think that the line from my mom was, I need some time to digest this, I think was how she put it. Of course, it's how she put it. She's also a chef, you know, in food terms. But basically very well. And there was a little bit of an adjustment period for my mom. My dad was much quicker to sort of just say like, all right, well, fuck it. You know, that's fine. He didn't really care. He's always tried very hard to just take a very hands-off approach like that. Like if that works for you, then that's great. Like I don't really need to say anything else. But they've been very supportive. And since then, like, we talked to them very early. We talked to them that first summer, like 2 months in or something like that. And again, the big difference was we weren't sharing about our sex lives. So it wasn't about keeping private. Like if I was dating somebody and it got serious in the first 2 or 3 months, I'd probably tell my parents about it. We might not all go to brunch just yet, but like it was COVID. I didn't have to make that decision. Yeah. Thank God. Oh, thank God for COVID. Yeah. You know, so just to adjust that timeline, we did recently meet some of those in-laws, but they've all known about it now for a full 2 years. Yeah.
But like this was the first you told your parents that you were being open in your marriage?
When I told them, when we first told them 2 or 3 months in, which I guess was 2020. Yeah. Yeah. Summer of 2020, we talked to them. And my parents were, like I said, mostly warm and accepting with that small hesitation.
That when they learned that you and Ashley were non-monogamous?
Oh, no.
So they knew before you were dating Rachel and her husband?
Yeah.
Okay.
But up until that point, I think there was sort of an assumption that it was more of a sex life conversation, more so than I'm out there looking for more love or something like that. I think that piece was a shift for them. They're like, this is not just, I'm not just sharing with you about my sex life.
Right.
And now it's wonderful. Like we've traveled together. We spent a week over the holidays at his parents' house up in the country. They're just wonderful people. And I love them so much.
I'm curious if, you know, your outside relationships were just the casual sex open. Do you think you wouldn't tell your families? And you would just be like, you know what? They don't need to know.
Like if I had a
Like
casual
if you
sex partner for 2.5 years that I had dinner with all the time. You mean like that? I guess.
No,
where are we drawing that line?
I guess
Like if I'm just going out and like fucking people.
yeah, I guess not the level you're at
Well, so
relationship, like boyfriend girlfriend.
We're on dating apps.
Mm-hmm.
My parents don't know about that.
Yeah,
Like
They may
I guess
now.
They may now. Right.
Hey, Mom.
But what I mean is like that. I'm not sharing that. I'm not sharing
Right.
that. Like maybe I'll go meet somebody on Tuesday.
I'm
Mhm.
sharing that. I share that with my
Oh,
parents.
you,
Okay,
you share
yeah.
everything with the whole world. I mean, that's
Okay, not everything.
yeah. Let's get into it.
No, but like
Right.
I enjoy sharing. You know, my mom is also dating, and so I like being
Mhm.
able to share stories with her, and
Yeah.
be able to talk like that now that I am actually at an appropriate age to talk about that with her. And my dad doesn't really have an interest in hearing. He'll just make really awkward jokes. So I tend not to share all the things
Oh,
because
yeah.
he'll say something offensive on accident.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's fun.
No, I'd assume so. I know my mom listens to this and my Patreon. And it's funny
Nice.
that she like loves it. She's like, I feel like we're closer than ever before. And I'm like, you shouldn't know any of this. But it's made her be cooler about stuff.
Yeah.
Because she realized how much I never told her. And I think that like almost kind of hurt her a little.
Yeah.
Where she was like, oh, wow, this kid really told me nothing about dating, relationships, any of that stuff. And it was like, yeah, because you'd freak out. I'd tell you this much and you'd freak out. And I told her that. And so my sister tells her way more than I do because I was like, just don't freak out. I was like, because a lot of times we're only telling you a sliver of the story and gauging and then going, yeah, no, that's good. I'll keep it in the vault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Or there's two things parents always do. This drove me nuts. I would hate when I'd be like, do not tell dad. And it would be the smallest thing, but you remember when you're young. And then you find out your dad knows.
Yeah.
He makes a comment
You're
to
like
you.
betrayed.
And exactly.
Yes.
And it's like, when
It's
you're
over.
young, it's like, yeah, it was a dumb, cute thing.
Doesn't matter.
And it thinks it's funny, but it's like, no, but there's something to being like, this was your test.
Yep.
And you failed.
Now I don't tell you anything.
Yeah. No, not at all. Oh God, that was like one of some of the other questions I have. I was going to say, what are some, I guess, kind of the accusations people kind of throw at you, or like what are the common, I guess, negative comments people make towards being a polyamorous couple?
I think a lot of I get you must be jealous all the time, or frankly, it's less shitty assumptions about me and more people projecting themselves into my life. So comments like, oh, I could never do that. And I'm like, I didn't ask you if you could.
Yeah.
Like that it's, and sharing about, I use this analogy all the time of like, we have so many friends and our society has accepted that is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if we lived in a society where having one friend was the norm and you were like, actually, I'm someone that likes to have 4 best friends.
Mhm.
And someone was like, oh my God, I could never have 4 friends. You'd be like, what?
Yeah.
But if that's the norm, that's the norm. And so we're all just conditioned to have this mononormative, like there's one position for the romantic and sexual partner of a person. So this like, I could never do that thing gets tossed in a lot. That I'm too jealous of a person. Oh, you must not be jealous is something that gets tossed in. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's not true. Yeah. And
I mean, I don't get any negative, like no one is out there bullying me, on a routine basis here. But I would say the kinds of things I might get are, yeah, that's totally fine, but maybe the 4 of you shouldn't come to this event. Or like, yeah, it's totally fine, but then only 2 people get invited to the family bar mitzvah or whatever.
Or weddings.
Or wedding or whatever it is. Weddings are tough.
Yeah.
But it's never super.
It's not out of hate.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I was like, wedding, it might just be like, it's already hard enough handing out those +1s.
Exactly.
Right. Now it's a +3. That's a lot of money.
Exactly.
That's a lot of money getting thrown out. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's, do your rotation and whoever's in the rotation.
That's
is the
literally
+1.
what we do.
Yeah, I think the ickiest. I think like
I'm like weddings. I understand. I'll throw them a bone.
Yep.
But I
Those
totally
catering
also
bills
get
are high,
like a child's party of some kind. So whether it's bar mitzvah 13 or now that you're planning on having kids, there probably will be parents at your school that will be all like, wow. And it will break
I don't
your
want
heart
that around my kids, things like that, right? And that's and
you don't want your
tough.
kid to be excluded because of it either,
Yes.
which I feel like will be the hardest part.
100%. And I'm ready to cross that bridge. That's for future Rachel to
Yeah.
navigate. Right now, I'm like,
So we talked about telling my parents. I also told a bunch of my extended family, in part because we do lead relatively public lives, Rachel especially.
Yeah.
And it felt like I needed to tell not just my parents, but my family and cousins who were going to be seeing this, you know, that I'm very close with. And not all of them had the same response. One of them, one of my cousins actually told us like not to talk to the kids about it and to hide that from the kids. We're not, you know, we don't want to talk to them about it. We don't want them to grow up that way.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the flavor of the most negative stuff that I get is like, it's all fine. Just like, can you do that like over there?
Which
please?
For me, as both personally and professionally, is like a very, personally, it's a very triggering thing for me. Professionally, it's like a thing for me. Because shutting down who I am and like changing aspects of myself to not make people uncomfortable. You know, I was a very boisterous, loud theater kid who like loved laying on people and, you know, cuddling and giving massages and blah, blah, blah. And I was
classic
asked to
theater kid shit, by the way.
Exactly.
I was in theater.
Yeah.
See? Thank you.
We had a lot of massage trains going on.
All
It's
the
a thing.
massage trains.
It's a thing.
It's
It's a
you just
thing.
want to touch each other and it feels good and it's great.
Room full of extroverts.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
just-
a lot going on.
It's so much going
Yeah.
on. So much going on. So like oftentimes people be like, okay, Rach, like you got to turn that down today. We're like at XYZ event. And I wound up developing panic disorder because of things like that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so while I have worked through that enough to where like I did not have a panic attack when this was said, it still is a very triggering thing for me to have the feeling that someone is watching me to not be me. And from then a professional perspective as a therapist, I'm like, can we not?
Yeah.
Like, can we just?
This is unhealthy.
This is not healthy.
Yeah.
Like your kid knowing about non-monogamy is not going to make them non-monogamous. Just like your kid knowing about bisexuality or
Or that
being
gender's
gay
a choice.
or
Yeah.
gender fluidity is not going to change who they are. It's going to let them know that there is something else besides cisgender, heterosexual monogamy. And that's just the truth. That's not convincing them of something. That's not anything. That's just like the sky is blue.
Right. I mean, I do understand, obviously, the monogamous perspective. And partly just, it's confusing. Especially if, you know, you come from a more religious family. And everything that's being taught essentially is indirectly also heterosexual. Even though most, you know, religious organizations are like, oh, we're accepting of gay people, but they still can't get married there and whatnot. But it's like every Bible story is
Accepting.
a man and a woman, or you say when two people are married and da da da. So it's like, it makes people have to basically backtrack all the stuff they've already taught. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's like, I get it of like, man, kids already ask a lot of questions. And you're like, I got to explain this and I don't even know what's happening.
That's
you know?
frankly why we need more representation of non-monogamy, of queerness, of gender fluidity in kids' books, in TV, in media. Because if it were out there just as much as everything else, then it wouldn't be a big deal. Like there's a great book, I think it's called A Color Named Love or something like that. And it's a kid's book about polyamory. And it's really, really cool. And if we had that in terms of fluid sexuality, and of course, we're not teaching kids, when I say fluid sexuality, I don't mean teaching a 4-year-old about intercourse. But what I mean is saying, you know, some women like women, some boys like boys, some people are non-binary and they may like anyone, right? Like whatever the combination is, and explaining the difference between gender and sexuality. And we don't even have to use the word sexuality. If it's like, oh, but it has sex in it. It's like, okay, who they like.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like that's all we're talking about. And we know that kids like as young as 3 and 4 have crushes, right? Like I had a crush in preschool and kindergarten. And so we can use that language. We don't have to say like the sexual orientation of that human on the gender spectrum. Like, yeah.
No, I get it. It's funny that you bring up people like a representation of. I went and saw that movie Lightyear recently. And I didn't know this till then. I was at a family party and I was like, oh, I saw Lightyear. It was great. And then someone was like, yeah, I heard they made Buzz Lightyear gay. And I was like, what? And I just like never saw whatever article they're talking about. But apparently there were all these articles about not him. His best friend in the movie is a woman and she is gay. and ends up having a female partner. But it's never like, she's gay. It's not loud. It's just like,
It's just
through the
there.
movie,
Happening.
she has this partner. They suddenly have a kid. And it's like, really no sexuality shown. There's like one kiss shown, and people are blowing up a bit about it.
See, and that's exactly what the representation it needs to be. It's just like, put it there. You
Yeah.
don't even have to be like, look, there's a gay person in the movie. Or like, look, they have more than one partner. If it just was, then it normalizes it. And the
Right.
reason why people are like, I don't want to explain this to my kids is because of what you're saying. It's so much fucking work to have to explain social norms to a 5-year-old.
Right.
Like you can't to explain like what a social construct is like not an easy thing to do. And frankly, we don't get taught how to communicate at all in school. So most of us, I mean, I learned how to communicate in a master's program to become a therapist.
Right.
Like most people don't know how to effectively communicate. And that's not their fault. It's our stupid society's fault that we don't teach it. And so then they're at a loss of like, even if they want to teach their kids about this stuff, they simply don't know the word, like the literal words to say.
Yeah.
And it's like, Yair has 2 wives. Like, nope, that's polygamy. Like that. Nope, we're not Mormon. Like that's not what's going on. Like there, and it's hard if you don't have the language. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like it's a lot to put on a parent to explain all of that.
Yeah.
And they need a little bit of support. God forbid we should beef up the sex ed curriculums and like give them a little bit of a head start so they're not starting from scratch with what they learned 40 years ago in their 40-year-old sex ed program or whatever it is.
God.
I mean, a lot are sadly abstinence-only education.
It's
they don't
terrible.
even,
And
they don't teach anything.
The
Yeah.
good sex ed programs are still not that good. Like
Yeah.
still, woefully underpreparing kids for all of these kinds of conversations
Yeah.
and then woefully underpreparing the parents to have them with those kids.
Right.
More representation in movies, books, all of that stuff, again, take some of that weight off of the parents and those scary conversations. I don't blame them for feeling scared. Like those are hard conversations to have.
Yeah. And frankly, going back to like the why are you talking to me about your sex life thing, is that if that thought is already there, then that person thinks that they're talking to their kids about someone else's sex life. And like
Right.
that doesn't make sense.
No.
So like unless the concept is understood by the adult in the situation, there's no fucking way that they're going to be able to explain it to the kid.
Well, everything's about attitude. Like, I mean, talk about sex ed. I have herpes, and when I have to disclose that to partners, there's so many people that know just nothing about it. And I forget every time I disclose to a new person. I'm like, oh, yeah, most people know nothing. Like, you just forget. Also, just living in New York, it's like, oh, people are so progressive here. They know things. And then you always just constantly run into people like, you don't know shit.
Have you ever had the experience where you disclose and the person says, oh, I don't, but I get cold sores on my mouth?
All this, yeah. Not even like me disclosing, just like friends.
Yeah. What is that?
They're like, oh, I get mouth herpes. I'm like,
You're like,
herpes.
that is herpes. That
It's the
is
same
just
thing.
herpes.
It's the same thing. I'm like, that's what I have. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, you can get it in other places. Like, that's the biggest thing people don't know is like, if they get cold sores, I'm like, you can pass that to like your partner's genitals.
Correct.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So just be a little careful. But like in the same way, it's like, that's my frustration is like, how we treat cold sores on your face is how we should treat genital herpes. It's the same thing.
Correct.
Because people are like, well, I dated someone that got cold sores. I'm like, yeah. And they just went, yeah, if I feel it coming, no kissing. And you're like, cool.
Right.
And I was like, that's kind of the end.
Well, and STIs are
conversation.
just like, colds or strep throat.
A lot of times. Yeah.
Like if they're treatable with antibiotics, like we're literally talking about the same thing. Like I had strep throat, made out with him. He gets strep throat. And we take an antibiotic and then we're good. If I got chlamydia and we had sex, he may get chlamydia, we take an antibiotic and then we're good.
Yeah.
But yet one of those is like, oh, that's so sad you have strep throat. And the other is like, oh, you got chlamydia?
Yeah. You ruined your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like,
now you're a slut. Now you're a real slut.
Yeah. And I was like, you can get strep throat from also fucking.
Yeah.
I just like everyone to know that.
Yeah.
Crap. I forgot what my train of thought was about. I was like, herpes education. All right. Well, I had this question for you guys in general of what would you say to someone that says, oh, you're polyamorous. Like, why don't you just cheat? Or they see it as like, oh, you just were cheaters in your past relationships and stuff, but now you're polyamorous. So it's just this like cover up for you just want to cheat, you dirty cheaters or whatever.
Cheater fucker.
Well, I would start with, well, you're partly right. I'd start there probably. I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people have had my experience, which is that they have been cheaters in the past, and sort of
because the norms.
Right. It wasn't okay. And I knew for myself that some of the stuff that I was doing wasn't affecting the relationship that I was in. Of course, it was because it was unhealthy and wasn't honest. The dishonesty was. And I sort of later figured out that all of those pieces put together actually meant something else, and not just that I was this shitty person who couldn't keep my dick in my pants and blah, 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 and all these other things. So I would start with, well, that's in part true, but I would then talk to them about how cheating is about honesty, not about having sex with a second human being. And so, no, it's not just an excuse to cheat. It's a different setup where we're being honest with each other. It's just not the same thing. It's sort of where I would start with there.
Yeah.
That's such a good answer. I also think that I would add that you can cheat in non-monogamy. So like you were saying,
yes,
cheating is not about how many people you're having sex with. What cheating is breaking an agreement that you have with your partner.
And our last episode, you broke down there's rules and there's agreements.
Yes.
And agreements is a deal you have with a partner, and a rule is above both of you.
Exactly. Wow,
Yeah.
Erica.
I re-listened. I freshened up.
I love it.
I'm becoming a therapist by each episode. I'm trying.
Love it.
Sorry, but I cut off what you were saying.
No. So if you have an agreement, like if Jaeger and I have an agreement that I'm not going to eat at Sweet Green with any other partner, and I take a partner to Sweet Green, I have betrayed the agreement of our relationship. Now you may be like, oh my God, Rachel, it's Sweet Green. But like that's cheating because I have literally done something that I said I would not do with someone else. That is exactly what happens in a monogamous relationship when someone has sex with someone else and doesn't tell their partner. It's cheating. So like cheating itself is about lying to the person that you're with and breaking an agreement. It's not about the quantity of humans that you are having meaningful experiences of pleasure with.
True, because in, quote, straight monogamous world, not even straight, just monogamous world, let's say that, there's always this thing of while you're dating, the conversation of when are we exclusive?
Yes.
When are we not seeing other people, sleeping with other people? And, New York City life is like, until you have that conversation, you essentially assume they are.
Right.
Until like there's no way for you to know until the person says to you, hey, this is just me and you now. And you get that agreement.
And that's one of the things that I love about non-monogamy is that you have that conversation on your first date. On your very, very first date, it's like, what are we looking for here?
Yeah.
Because there's for example, I have 3 primary partners. I do not want another primary partner.
Right.
I do not want someone to move in with us. I don't want to raise kids with anyone else. So if someone is looking for a primary partner, I am not the person. That conversation needs to happen either before the first date or on the first date.
Right. Because also the branch of ethical non-monogamy is so big.
Yes.
It's, some people might be in the romantically I'm with one person, sexually I'm with others.
Exactly.
Well, and it's more than just that. Frankly, that's in the monogamous world too, right? So on Tinder, there's really only 2 options, right? The option is, are we going to fuck tonight and maybe a couple more times because it was fun? Or are we going to fuck a bunch of times and also date, but with the intention of getting married and proceeding in that direction? And there's really only a couple of directions to go in monogamy. It's either we're going to be serious or we're not going to be serious. And that's kind of it. There's a couple of gray areas, but for the most part, like you said, when we're ready to be exclusive, we'll be exclusive. So like that's one path towards exclusivity. And the other path is, well, I'm single and I'm going to do all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But in non-monogamy, it's not just binarily sex or moving into a house in Westchester together. There's a lot of in-betweens there too. There's, like I said, we're on dating apps. There are, some of us are dating, and, with some feelings. Some of us are not. Some of us are doing things more casually. And those things are also not all created equal. Just because they aren't necessarily fully casual or fully committed doesn't mean there isn't anything between.
It also changes what the word commitment means. Because in monogamy, commitment generally is synonymous to exclusivity and monogamy. But I'm in a committed relationship with all 3 people. And frankly, if we zoom out and really look at the relationships thing, I'm in a committed relationship with my friends. Like that is a committed relationship. I'm committed to maintaining this relationship.
Right.
And so if you ask yourself, okay, what does commitment mean? Most people have trouble answering that question when the answer is not monogamy and exclusivity.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fair. It's interesting. I think I saw, it might have even been a TikTok trend. I saw this question. It was like, what is cheating mean to you in a relationship? And the answers were across the board. Like some people, they're like, if you're DMing girls, just chatting to them, or men, whoever, like the line I think truly is different for each person.
Yeah.
And it's like when you break it down on a smaller scale like that, like that's where me and all my monogamous friends would debate. Like we all would not agree what is cheating.
Right. And
People
you
say
get to
porn is cheating. There's that answer.
Some
Yeah.
people think porn. Mm.
Yeah, I've been a terrible person my whole life, apparently. Since I was 12.
And that's why making agreements is so important. And in monogamy, that is not something that I learned to do. That's a skill that I learned in non-monogamy, right? Like I didn't sit down and be like, okay, this is what cheating is to me. What is cheating to you? In my monogamous relationships, and like coming up with agreements of, okay, cool. Yeah. Like look at as much porn as you want, DM whatever it is. For me, the line is here. And that conversation didn't really ever happen until it was crossed.
Exactly. I think most couples never touch on that. Whereas, and it's suddenly someone saying you cheated on me and the other person saying, no, I didn't. Yeah.
Exactly. And in non-monogamy, that's like very, very early on. You're setting up agreements and what it means and what the scope of the relationship is, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Yeah, it's very true. And always happens when it's crossed, but it's almost like the physical line of crossing is like the unwritten one.
Yes.
In the monogamous world.
Yes.
But it's like there's plenty of, I was just dating someone that was becoming friends with their ex and hanging out with their ex a lot. And I was like, not being like, oh, this is cheating, but I finally just was like, hey, I feel like you hang out with your ex more than me and you talk to them more than me. And they didn't argue that. And I didn't go, this is cheating, but I basically was like, this is
I don't like
a boundary that I don't like.
Yeah.
And I can't make you not do this. But essentially, it was like, well, then this isn't the relationship for me.
Right.
I can't do you and your ex hanging out one-on-one.
Yep.
All the time.
So, I mean, welcome to our coffee table. That's how we do it. And now, not at that, we don't draw our line there, but that's exactly how we do it. Is this something that is a non-starter for me? Is this something I'm uncomfortable with, but I'm willing to work through? Is it something that's totally cool and I don't actually need to even know when it happens? You can just kind of do it. You know, like I don't need to know every single time you swipe right on Tinder. I do not need to be made aware of that. That's fine. I don't need to be made aware when there's a match. But like, I'd like to know somewhere between there and we're in a fully committed relationship. We've been having sex for 3 weeks. I'd like to know somewhere. And I think everyone has their line. You know, people also, how many dates with a person of an opposite gender without making out before that's called cheating? How many times going to the movies with a female best friend, if you're, whatever. Nobody has, again, we don't usually have those conversations until you've been to the movies 3 times and someone feels weird about it.
Right.
And we do that also. We learn with it by experience, but a lot of those conversations, we do our very best to be as thorough as possible before we get started.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Has anyone in your family ever vetoed someone dating someone else?
No.
Never.
No.
No. Yeah, no.
We don't.
Veto is an interesting word.
I don't know what.
No. That's actually the word.
So I was kind of like, is there a system for that?
Yeah.
What if there's someone? Let's specifically say there's an ex that comes in the picture,
right?
And it's like, you know what?
So
no,
like in theory, everyone has veto power in the sense that not in the sense of using that power to talk about when you're uncomfortable and this one is not okay. But like in theory, if you came to your partner and said like, this is making me so deeply uncomfortable that I don't really know what to do with myself. Like, I would like to think that that would weigh as heavily as a veto. Like, it wouldn't. We don't veto. I don't know what to say. We don't. That's not how we do it. So if I was
or
deeply,
it hasn't come up.
It hasn't come up.
But it's a fair question. That it's like if I opened a relationship with someone, I feel like I would have some type of lines. Or
the issue with veto power is that it discounts the other person's humanity. So like the idea that someone who doesn't know the other person can say, I just don't want you to see them, it is challenging. Now, like you're saying, it's a little different if you say, I follow this person that you're dating on Instagram and they posted this thing about how COVID's not real. And I feel really uncomfortable about this. And I don't know really what to do with that.
Yeah.
Then it's a conversation where the person dating that person may say, oh, okay, actually, this isn't worth it to me.
But what if it is worth it to them?
Then it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But I will say what you mentioned, what you asked about the ex. One of the agreements Kyle and I had when we first opened up our relationship was no one from our past. So
I would think no one from your past, or for me, it would be nobody we know. mutually.
Yeah.
But that's because if I ever did open, my style of open would not be full-on relationships with other people.
Yeah, it
Personally.
was basically that. I mean, we had just recently moved to New York, so we luckily had like less of a we moved here in 2018. And so like our pool of people we knew together here was very small, which helped that.
Right.
But we did agree like no one that we have dated or had hooked up with or were friends with benefit, like whatever it was, nobody like making a repeat appearance and being like, yes, I get to go back to this person. Like that would have felt shitty.
Yeah, I would just like the fans to know that even non-monogamous people say X's are a no.
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
It didn't work out for a reason, and you should never hang out with them. And someone tell that guy I was dating. Anyway. Okay, I have one kind of I think a little more fun question. So you're a therapist.
Yes.
You're very well spoken. Even just this conversation we're all having, we're like, we approach it with, I'm uncomfortable. And no. I would love to know an example of what's a time that you kind of slipped up your communication and you didn't communicate like a therapist.
Oh God, all the time.
All the time.
All the time. I'm a human. I can okay, so two that come to mind. One was like a conflict one, and one actually kind of relates to your last question. So there was a time Kyle and I were having a fight, and I am typically very good at like taking my space, which he hates. But taking my space and like getting my nervous system calmed down and then approaching it, like you're saying, very like, I feel this emotion when da 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 da. And I'm like, I'm pretty good at doing that. I don't know what was happening this day. I truly cannot remember for the life of me, but I went into our bedroom and started throwing the clothes out of the dresser into the hallway and then proceeded to take the drawer out. And when I say throw, I don't mean actually throw because it was a very heavy wood drawer and I am not strong. So it was more of like a shove of the thing.
Yeah.
And I tossed it. We'll call it tossed. Kyle's going to laugh if and when he listens to this. Tossed it. And he just looked at me and he goes, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I mean, yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. And I walked outside and like went on a walk around the block and then came back and just cried. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I don't even know. So I've done that. And Yair was kind of seeing somebody, and I don't know what it was, but like I could not shake this feeling that this person was like icky. I don't know what else to say. She's lovely.
You got an ick.
I'm sure reason. She's lovely.
Yeah.
I literally do not know her.
Yeah.
Sure, she's lovely. I was like, no, I just, every fiber of my being was like, oh, I can't believe he's having sex with her. I can't believe he's having sex with her. Like, I like couldn't, and I most of the time was really good at sharing that in a healthy way, but I definitely had some moments where like a text would pop up and it would be from her, and I would like get kind of like snippy for a minute instead of being like, I feel uncomfortable. I was like, oh, text.
But that's such a beautiful example of like, we've all been there. Someone's getting text from someone.
Yeah.
That, whether you're monogamous or not.
Yes.
And it's like, what is the appropriate thing to say other than you just being like, I just don't want you fucking talking to this person? Like, what?
Right.
What is the therapy, filter for that?
So I think really is taking a second to ask yourself what it is that you're feeling, literally the emotion that you're feeling when you see the text or the name pop up. So like for me, it was discomfort and jealousy because I wanted to be focused with him, like our focus time in the car. And in my head, when this text popped up on the screen, I was like, now he's going to be thinking what she texted him. Oh, it's probably a nude picture. Now he's going to be thinking about the nude picture. Okay, now we're not going to be able to talk because he's thinking about this chick naked. I don't like this chick, right? Like, and then I'm like down the road and I'm like, can we just be present in the car? And all of that turned into like a snippy comment. So if I had just paused and said, hey, I felt a little uncomfortable when this text popped up. Can we mute your notifications for the rest of our drive?
Yeah.
So that we can just like be together. And then when we get home, you can go look at your probably nude photo. Like, you know what, like whatever it is, but really like just coming at it from this is how I'm feeling. This is how you can help me not feel this way. Okay. And then he can always say like, no. I mean, he wouldn't, he would probably say yes.
But I have that right, I suppose. But when it's brought to the table like that, and also when the solution is a container like that, as in, can you mute for the rest of the ride? Not, can you never have a text message pop up ever again in my presence?
Yeah.
Like, So when it's brought up that way, I mean, we love each other. You tell me what you need to feel comfortable while we're together. I mean, there's very little I wouldn't do. And that's come up in both directions, you know, where we try and set those sorts of containers. You know, we were on vacation recently, so that was a conversation, right? How much contact outside of us on vacation is there going to be? Things like that. And we didn't always handle it super well. I didn't always handle it super well.
I was like, we?
No. Royal we, you know?
Well, this is my question. If I was like a client of yours, how do I differentiate that exact scenario and it being a gut feeling I have about the whole situation and what my partner's doing versus kind of identifying like, oh, this is just my own anxiety?
Oh, that's the... Go
Well,
ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, you have to sit with it and think about it. I mean, it's very easy to fall into the groove that your brain gives you right away, right? I feel like throwing up. Well, that means she's doing something wrong, right? Of course. And the next thing is, I better fix this problem by telling her what to do rather than, okay, wait a second. Like a text popped up on the phone. Let's get a grip here. Like, this is not, this is not a 5-alarm fire. Like, we're going to be okay. And so taking a second and trying to figure out where that feeling is coming from. Is this supposed to be my time? Is it not really about that? Is it about something else? Is there something gut that I'm feeling? But you have to sit with it. It takes a second.
Yeah. And talking it out. And that's why therapy is such a great container, is like your therapist is trained to listen for patterns and trained to know your story and hear things that they can say, you know, that's so interesting. Can you tell me about a time that you felt like that before? And often what we perceive as like intuition or gut feelings are past traumatic events that are showing up passively. And so we're not always aware of that. They're subconscious. And a therapist can help kind of like bring those to light. So an example of this is the very first time in our relationship where Yair went out to go have a sexual date evening with someone else who I knew, love, adore this person. So like this was not a like icky thing. I like really care about this person and I obviously love him. And my body was like, and you want to vomit and you're going to stay up and you're going to panic and you want to vomit all the time. And I was like, what is happening? Like, I love this person. I know he's safe. Like I know she doesn't want to like kick me out and like take my place in the whole, like, why am I feeling this way? And it turns out that I was like projecting shit from my relationship when I was 19 years old with someone that he happened to like bring up stuff around who that guy just disappeared out of my life. Yeah. And so all of a sudden my subconscious was like, he's going to disappear out of my life. But like, I wasn't thinking that consciously. And the second that I was able to identify that with the help of my therapist, could not have done that on my own. Therapists need therapy. If your therapist is not in therapy,
I would assume even just to vent about the clients, because you can't legally. It's like a circle.
Yes,
it's like a chain of everyone venting about their clients. I would think. Oh, I would need to vent. That's why I couldn't be a therapist. I'd be like, I got to tell someone what this client just said.
Like truly processing everything. And so then I was able to come to him and say, hey, I know that I'm having these reactions, and I need you to know that they're actually not about you at all. Like, I am so supportive of you doing this. I know my body and face don't look like that right now, but that's actually not about you or this other person. Like, I truly want this for you. Here's what's going on for me. And then he was able to ask like, okay, how can I support you? And really it was like not a lot because it was my own shit to work through. But if I had not sat down and taken the time to like really process through that, it would have been really easy for me to be like, I'm uncomfortable with him going out. I guess I'm not, I must not be built for this.
But also landing at that answer did actually allow you to ask for things. It allows you to ask for hyper-specific reassurances, right? If you discover, once you do that work and figure out exactly what it was, you discover that you're scared of being, deserted, or you're scared of whatever the case is, you can then ask, can you reassure me that you're not out there looking for another partner? Can you reassure me you're not trying to look for a replacement? Can you reassure me that I am sticking around, or whatever you need to hear? And
that led us to, specifically, that example led Yair and I to figuring out different, physical tokens of commitment. So like at the time, well, we still don't, but at the time we had no, physical, I had a ring from my wedding with Kyle. Right. I had a ring from Ashley because she had like counter proposed later on. And I didn't have anything on my body that was year. And so that conversation led to, hey, would it actually feel better if there was something on your body that reminds you of I'm not going anywhere? And so a lot of these things can actually lead to really productive and wonderful things that wouldn't have happened.
If the person tries to meet the need that you're showcasing. Because I had that scenario and they said, what can I do to reassure you? And I told them that I just needed to hear from them more. And then I heard from them less.
Well,
and it's like, and it's, you know, like,
and then you're like,
that's
okay,
the part
bye.
where people like kind of wait around and it's like, that's where the line is. Like, where do you pull the cord?
If you ask for a specific reassurance and that person is just simply unwilling to give it to you, they're just not trying.
Exactly.
Like they're just not. And you can even say, hey, I asked for, like, you can do it one more time, right? Like, I asked for this last Tuesday, and between last Tuesday and this Tuesday, I have actually, I perceived hearing from you less.
Right.
Sup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because usually people are on their best behavior right away.
Right.
And then it dies.
Right.
So it's like when they never try is probably the most telling sign.
Yeah.
But I'm like, unfortunately, we do have to wrap this up.
Damn it.
But this is so fun. I'm so excited you were able to come on.
Thanks for having me on.
You were great.
Babes First Podcast.
Tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram. It's where I am most of the time at the Wright Rachel. So the WRIGHT _RACHEL. And my website is rachelwrightnyc.com. And as Erica said, my podcast is coming out. It's called The Wright Conversations, WRIGHT.
Yeah, check it out. And I'll put all the links in the description. And do you want to plug any of your socials, Yair?
No, not today. I'm all set.
You're good?
Thanks so much.
Okay. All right. He lives a private life. He's a private chef in the private life.
Exactly.
And if you stay tuned, we have a Patreon preview coming up next. And you can follow us at Shooters Gotta Shoot Pod. And I'm at Sparica with 2 A's. And we will see y'all next week. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
So essentially, like, okay, 2 months after you were, quote, terrified of being in a relationship, you're now so excited to be seeing someone. And so it's like, oh, no, like, this isn't a you're not ready thing. It was just you just didn't really like me that much. And it also just was a weird thing of like, I think I mentioned last week that weirdly, like after the Barcelona thing, like I kind of was like thinking about him and missed him. And so, you know, there's been a handful of like times that I've just been frustrated and, you know, naturally would just think about him, kind of be like, man, that was really fun. And I wish things worked out. If you want to hear the rest of this episode, join our Patreon, which is patreon.com/shootersgottashoot. For the price of buying a coffee a month, you can help support the show. You get all the behind the scenes content and we answer your questions. Patreon.com/shootersgottashoot.